Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for our webinar session. My name is Anu and I am from the 42Gears marketing team. I have with me today my colleague Bala, who is a senior software architect at 42Gears. Our webinar today will show you how 42Gears UEM eases the deployment of Office 365 apps and supports its use on the mobile devices. Before we get started, I would like to request you to add any questions you may have during the presentation in the question box. We'll answer them at the end of the webinar. And with that, I'll let Bala get us started.
Thank you for the introduction, Anushuva, and a very warm welcome to everyone. My name is Balamurli Gautaman, and I'm a senior software architect at 42Gears. Today, we'll be talking about how 42Gears can provide a central platform for businesses to configure Office 365 email and applications on business devices. So let's get down to business and start with our topic for the day. Let me start our discussion with understanding how Office 365 is used by businesses. Office 365 is the cloud version of Microsoft Office. It offers businesses easy access to productivity tools like Excel, PowerPoint, and Word. According to a recent report, Office 365 has more than 155 million monthly active users. This is not surprising. Microsoft has steadily been adding a lot of new features and functionality to attract customers to Office 365. Business owners find Office 365 useful because it ensures that their teams can collaborate and stay in sync. Microsoft's work on any device mantra has made it possible for employees to get a good Office experience while also ensuring the security of business data. There are many benefits of using Office 365. One, with Office 365, since all the applications and data are hosted on the cloud, they are always available. In addition, there is no need to connect through a VPN because the Office 365 cloud can be accessed from anywhere. Two, storing data online is helpful in case of device failures. A user could just switch to a new device and get all their data back from the cloud. Three, it offers the convenience of single sign-on to the users. With single sign-on, if a user logs in once in one application with their Office 365 login credentials, they have automatically logged in to all the other Office 365 applications. Four, an IT admin can make use of the malware filter and spam filter provided by default in the Office 365 Admin Center. This will save on setup costs. And five, it can support both types of users, on-premise as well as cloud. Let me try and simplify that for you a little bit. We'll start by taking a look at the different types of authentication methods for setting up an Office 365 account. There are two main authentication models in Office 365 to set up and manage user accounts: cloud authentication and federated authentication. Accounts which make use of cloud authentication are called managed accounts, and accounts that make use of federated authentication are called federated accounts. The choice of whether to use cloud authentication or federated authentication depends upon the use case and the existing infrastructure that an organization has. Let's talk about cloud-based authentication or managed accounts first. As the name implies, in cloud authentication, the user accounts are managed in the cloud using Azure AD. User accounts can be created and managed from the Office 365 Admin Center or by using Windows PowerShell commandlets. No on-premise servers are required. Cloud authentication is used if, number one, an organization does not have an on-premise user directory. Number two, it does not want to invest in new on-premise infrastructure. Or number three, in some cases, an organization might want to try out Office 365 using cloud authentication as a pilot. They can then switch to on-premise authentication during production. The second type of authentication is federated authentication. In federated authentication, the user directory is stored on-premise. The only requirement is that TCP port 443 should be open on the on-premise server that contains the user directory. This is the same port that is used by HTTPS traffic, and so opening it up should not be a problem. The easiest way to set up federated authentication is by running a tool provided by Microsoft called Azure AD Connect. This tool needs to be run on the on-premise server that has the ADFS service. Before enabling federation, we should have an SSL certificate for the on-premise ADFS server. This is an important prerequisite, and without this, the federation will not work. Federated authentication is used if, number one, the organization is uncomfortable with storing user details in the cloud and would like to keep it on-premise. Number two, if the organization would like to use an MFA provider other than Azure AD MFA. Azure AD only supports Azure AD MFA. In case a customer needs to use a third-party MFA provider, then federated authentication is required. And number three, federated authentication is used if client certificate-based authentication is required. We are now going to take a look at enrollment in Office 365 through a federated account. Let me show you this feature on the 42Gears UEM console. First, I guess I'll give you a short introduction on the UEM console. The window you see right in the middle is the device grid, where we show all the enrolled devices and devices that have been enrolled to our UEM. Over on the right-hand side, there's the device information screen, which shows information about the devices that have been enrolled again. Over on the left, we have device groups, which is a logical grouping of the devices that have been enrolled. And up top, we have actions that can be applied on the device. We have jobs and profiles, which I'll be explaining in a little more detail. And we have other things which essentially configure a device for use by the end user. Now, I'll show you how to configure ADFS for enrolling into 42Gears UEM. To do that, first, you click on the settings wheel, which is at the top right over here. Go into account settings. Once the account settings screen loads up, click on device enrollment rules. And then you give the details, you have to give the details of the ADFS server that we've configured. If you remember back to a previous slide, I had talked to you about running the Azure AD Connect tool on the ADFS server. This server that you see here, configured adpp.test.42gears.com. We have run the Azure AD Connect tool on this. It's our test server. Okay. So moving on. Let's see how Office 365 applications are deployed on mobile devices. In the 42Gears UEM console, there are two main ways to apply settings on an enrolled device, jobs and profiles. Jobs are used for sending commands to a device, for example, installing an application. Profiles are used to set both device-wide and application-specific settings. Using these settings, an admin can control the environment in a device. An example would be configuring an email account or configuring a VPN service. Let me show you a demo on how to deploy applications to the mobile devices. I have created a profile so that I can show to you guys. Just let's give it a moment to load. We'll take the iOS profile as an example for now. Okay, so there are four main portions that I wanted to talk to you about. First is the restriction profile. There's one restriction in particular that I wanted to show you. It's this one: documents from managed sources in unmanaged destinations, and documents from unmanaged sources in managed destinations. What does this mean? So suppose you have an application that is deployed through a MDM solution. It's called a managed application. Applications that are not deployed to a MDM are unmanaged applications. Now, this restriction prevents if an application has been received through a managed destination, which is an application that has been deployed to MDM. Having this restriction in place will prevent that application will prevent that document from being opened in an unmanaged application. And then we come over to the application policy. If you see here, we have added some Office 365 applications here, Microsoft Excel, PowerPoint, and Word. So you just allow a list of applications that you would like employees to install on their devices and enter it in the application policy. The third thing I wanted to show is the certificate profile. Here, we could use both password-based authentication and certificate-based authentication. Password-based authentication has its problems. Certificate-based authentication is considered more secure. So you could deploy either one certificate for all the devices, in which case it becomes less secure, because even if one certificate gets compromised, we'll have to change all the certificates on all Android devices. So typically, organizations would use a protocol such as SCEP, Simple Certificate Enrollment Protocol, to deploy certificates in bulk. So if you have thousands of devices enrolled in your UEM console, all you have to do is create a SCEP certificate and provide a wildcard. For example, you could just say, I want a certificate to be deployed on each device, but I want the certificates to be unique. And I would like the certificate name to be the device ID of the enrolled device, or the email address with which the device was enrolled. So the simple certificate enrollment protocol allows for that. The 42Gears UEM supports that. The next thing I wanted to show is the Exchange Active Sync profile. Here, there are two main things to notice. Number one is authentication is done through a SCEP certificate. There's no password here. And number two is the percentage email address percentage entry that you see for the username and the email address. What does this mean? This means when a user enrolls to the 42Gears UEM console, they would have enrolled with their email address. For this federated account, they would have used their Office 365 credentials to enroll the device to the console. So when this profile gets deployed, the profile will pull emails for the account with which the device was enrolled to the console. Now the profile is saved. Just apply it on my device. Okay. The next topic is how to manage Office 365 email and applications on mobile devices through 42Gears. IT teams need a central platform to define and enforce security policy framework across all email and mobile apps. With 42Gears UEM, IT admins can deploy business mail securely on approved devices. It allows employees to access business emails from their mobile phones and tablets while ensuring the security of the data. Allowing employees to access business emails from their smartphones and tablets offers them convenience and improves overall productivity. However, this level of flexibility also invites a whole lot of challenges, such as ensuring security over unsecured networks and restricting unauthorized access. Using certificate-based authentication is one way of restricting access to corporate emails from unauthorized devices. Certificates can be deployed only to employee-owned devices, and no other device will be able to access the business emails. However, there is one more level of security that organizations might want to incorporate. Even on a device which is allowed to access corporate email, an organization might want to restrict email access to only one particular application and deny email access to a secondary application. This can be because the approved email application has extra controls in place to ensure security. For this use case, the mobile email management or MEM solution offered by 42Gears will be helpful. From the Office 365 Admin Center, IT admins can disable email access for all mobile clients by default. At the time of device enrollment with 42Gears UEM, mail access for the pre-approved email application will be automatically enabled on the employee device. Let me show you how to set up email and single sign-on for Office 365 applications on the device. To do that, I'll switch over to my video feed, the device feed. Okay. So if you remember, we had an Exchange ActiveSync profile deployed onto the iOS device. The important thing to notice, it's using certificate-based authentication, and I'm able to access emails on my device. The second thing was I had pushed some Office 365 applications onto the device. Now, let me sign into one of the Office 365 applications. If you see here, when I tried to sign into the Office 365 application, the sign-in request got redirected to our federating server. It's signed in. Now, Microsoft by default provides this feature. So if you sign into one of the Office 365 applications, sign into the other Office 365 application will happen automatically. We don't need to enter our credentials, re-enter our credentials again. So I opened Word before, now I'm opening PowerPoint. Again, an Office 365 application. So we go in here, it's logged in already. No need to enter credentials once again. Similar to this, we could access Excel also. How does the same thing look on an Android device? Well, it looks pretty similar. Let me show you that. If you see here, it's the same email account is present on the Android device also. And I had allowed access to Gmail application that got deployed too. And we've got the Word, PowerPoint, and Excel applications here. There's Word there, PowerPoint there, and Excel somewhere up top. So that's how it looks on an Android device. Okay. And lastly, we'll take a look at containerization and data protection policies offered by 42Gears. Using the features that we've talked about until now, businesses can offer flexibility and convenience to the workforce. However, businesses must also ensure that their data remains protected in these devices and that there are no leakage incidents. With containerization policy, businesses can prevent sharing Office 365 data to personal apps. 42Gears offers containerization support for iOS, Android, and Windows, making use of the provisions offered by the operating system in each case. In the case of an employee-owned device, the applications that are deployed from the UEM solution will be the managed applications, and the applications that are installed by the employee are unmanaged applications. So if you remember, when I showed the restriction policy on the iOS profile, I had showed you a disallowing copy of managed application data to unmanaged destinations, and disallowing the other way around, disallowing copy of unmanaged source files to managed destinations. So whatever I'm talking about now is the same thing. So sharing between an unmanaged application and a managed application is disallowed. Another useful feature is the device wipe. If an employee device gets lost or stolen, or if the employee quits, it's easy for the administrator to wipe all the sensitive data from the device with a single click from the UEM console. Let me just show you these things in action. Okay, so on the iOS device, in addition to the managed email, I also have my personal email. Let's try to open a PDF document from the managed email. So the options to share are limited to only the MDM installed applications. If you see, the PDF document cannot be shared with any application other than Mail or SureMDM Nix, which is our MDM agent. Let's do the same thing on an unmanaged email account. I've got the same file here. Here we get many more options. We get the managed applications and the unmanaged applications in addition. So the restriction to open from managed to unmanaged sources is in force here. This feature is even more powerful on Android. Let me show you that just a moment. On Android, the restriction goes one step further. If you remember, we have deployed Microsoft Word as a managed application, and I also have a copy of Microsoft Word that I have deployed myself. It's an unmanaged application, not deployed through the MDM. I open my managed Word, open some file, and I try to copy something. Okay, copied. Now I open the unmanaged version of Word. This is my unmanaged version, so I have not signed into this yet. So if you see here, the paste option is grayed out. So not able to bring it to the center, but the paste option, if you see here, is grayed out. So what we did was we tried to open some managed document, copy some text from there, and we tried to paste it on an unmanaged version of Word. It didn't allow it. In iOS, a managed file cannot be opened in an unmanaged destination. In Android, we go one step further and we cannot even copy paste. The clipboard is not shared between managed and unmanaged applications. I wanted to show one more thing, which is the remote wipe. We had talked about it. Turn you over to the SureMDM console for that. So to do the remote wipe, we select the device and go over to the device info action screen on the top right, and then click on wipe. So what this will do is, when we set up the device, we had applied a lot of profiles on the device. We had applied I'll show you something really quick. So as soon as we applied the remote wipe job, the device has restarted. Now what is it doing? When we apply the remote wipe job, we had applied email access, Office 365 applications, and some restriction policy on the device. We wipe it and all the sensitive data is gone. Office 365 applications will not remain on the device. The email account will be revoked. So essentially, the device has lost all the MDM configurations that we did. So with that, we come to the end of the session. Thank you for listening. Let's now move on to the Q&A session. The first question I see is, in the MEM policy, you said email access can be disabled for all mobile clients by default. How do you do that? Okay, so let me show you that on the Office console. We do this from the Office 365 Admin Center. And then we go over to the top left, admin, and then there will be an admin page for Exchange Active Sync. Give it a moment while it loads. This one. Then we click on mobile and edit policies and check on block access. This is what you would do to disable access for all email clients by default. Okay. If you have any questions, you can type them in now. Okay, so the next question is, for a managed account, how do you add or modify users in Azure AD? So essentially, you you could do it through the Office 365 Admin Center itself, what I just showed now. You can add users from there, or you could also use the Microsoft Azure Active Directory module for Windows PowerShell or Azure Active Directory PowerShell for Graph. These are PowerShell commandlets. You could use that to add users also. Any other questions? You could type them in. Okay, so I don't see any more questions. So we'll move on to the next slide. If you do have any other questions, please feel free to drop in a mail at webinars@42gears.com or visit us at www.42gears.com. And with that, we come to the end of this webinar. Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure being with you today. Thanks again for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.